All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us for another edition of our Chrome Apps Office Hours. We're joined today by Renato Mangini, who's joining us from Brazil today. I'm Pete LePage. I'm a developer advocate here in New York City working on Chrome apps. And it's great to have everybody join us today. I think we've got a pretty interesting setup for you today. We're going to be talking about the WebView control, which allows you to embed live web components within your Chrome app. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Renato, who can talk a little bit about Chrome apps and the WebView. Renato, whenever you're ready to share some screens, let me know, and I'll get us going from there.
Thank you, everyone. This is Renato Mangini. I'm developer advocate for Chrome apps, and I'm talking directly from Brazil. Today, we will present the WebView component. The WebView component is an element. You put this element inside your Chrome packaged app, and what it does is it gives you the ability to embed, as Pete said, a whole website inside your application. This is quite interesting, and one friend of mine asked me, why would you want to embed a website inside your application? Because you're doing an application, you're not doing a website. And there are some compelling use cases. We will talk about that at the end. But you can think like testing websites. You can think about several other potential reasons for that. But we identified two very, very compelling reasons for that at the beginning. The first one, Chrome packaged app is a new platform. You are listening to us now. You probably have one website or one Chrome old packaged app or a Chrome hosted app, and you want to use the new APIs that are available to Chrome packaged app and only to Chrome packaged app. However, you don't want to, at the first moment, you want to create a prototype to show to your boss or to present to your customers at first, and you just want to try the platform before committing to it. So you can create like a hybrid application where you embed your application, you change your code to detect if it's running inside the WebView, and if it does, it uses a way of communicating between the WebView and the platform, the Chrome packaged app, the real Chrome packaged app that it's embedding that WebView. This is one use case, one potential use case, and the other use case that we are working on to make it very easy for you to use is the social network buttons, the widgets. Suppose you want to include the Google Plus widget inside your Chrome packaged app. Currently, you cannot unless you use the WebView, because it uses a series of embedded scripting and things that CSP doesn't allow you to do. And so basically, what we want to give you here is a way to include either a whole web application or more probably a small widget or a small part of your application inside your Chrome packaged app, and have all the benefits of a Chrome packaged app that you probably heard about. That's why you were here listening to us. So, okay. Do you have any question, Pete? Anything that
No, I think that sort of lays out things really well. The one thing I do want to say is, as we're going through this, if you have questions that you want to ask either Renato or myself, if there's things that you're kind of curious about, we're taking questions through our Google moderator page. The link's up on the screen right now. You can go post your questions at capital Y, goo.gl/capital Y, little f, capital P, capital N, 5. Like I said, the URL is there on screen. You can go post your questions there. We'll be taking those live towards the end. And as well, we'll post the link to some of the documentation and samples as we go on. So, all right, Renato, why don't we...
Okay, so let's code, right?
Yeah.
Before you switch to my window, I will show you first and before everyone else, one special project I'm working on that will help you develop Chrome apps and Chrome extensions. It's not ready yet. That's why we didn't publish it.
This is the one that you've been talking about internally that you've shown us.
Yes. It's API integration with some IDEs, especially
awesome,
the Sublime. But yeah, as I say, it's very, very early stage. There are a lot of functions that are not ready yet. But anyway, I will start this project using this project. I will start the sample using this project, so you'll see how it simplifies things.
Okay, cool.
So can you switch to my window?
All right. So they can now see me with your window up, and they've got you up in the top right corner.
Yes. All right. This is Sublime editor. This is a text code editor. Several people in the front end world use a lot. It's very cool. We've been using it here since the first GDL session. And if you look, if you have enough resolution on your streaming, you can see there's an additional menu at the last item here. It's Chrome, right?
Yep.
And there are some options, and we will not. Most of the options are not implemented now, so never mind. But anyway, before I start, I will show you the URL where you can download this extension. It's not available on Sublime Package Manager yet. As I said, it's very, very early stage, but we'll soon, in 1 or 2 weeks, we will have a alpha version that you can try. So Pete, here are you again.
Hey guys.
Let me show. Yeah, that's it. That's the URL. It's I'm not sure if you can see that.
All right. Well, you know what, Renato? I'll get that up on screen in a little bit. If you can.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Can I go ahead, or do you want to get this?
You go ahead,
URL?
and I'll get the URL.
All right. So I will start a new project here. It's a Chrome app project. So I go to Chrome, new app, and I get the Hello World sample. And ta-da! You have the basic snippets done, ready for you. So let's save it here on my Mangini and WebView folder. There's live folder here, and that's it. And I'll save the main at the same directory, and the same for the index HTML. As you probably are aware of, this is the main structure of a Chrome packaged app. Yep. There's a JSON, a manifest. There's a JavaScript, which is the background page. The background page is responsible to open the UI, the actual UI of your app. So you have this, you listen to this onLaunched event, and you do whatever you want. Usually you would just create another window with pointing to the correct HTML. And here we have the basic.
Yep, so again, this is the
HTML.
standard stuff that people are used to seeing. All you did was create a real quick way of being able to put that in so that you don't have to either go write that yourself or maybe even just copy it from somewhere else, right?
Exactly. That's it. So let's add this application to my live directory.
All right.
And here it is. It's hello world. Okay, so let's execute it. It's nothing different from the basics. It's a hello world application. And now we will add the WebView component. The WebView component is a HTML element, as I said before. It's a simple element were...
So you're just adding a WebView tag to your element. So it's basically exactly like you would add maybe an iframe or something like that. You're just using a WebView tag, which normal browsers aren't going to do anything with.
Yes, and it's a good thing you mentioned iframe, because one of the most common questions we get is, what is the difference between the WebView and the iframe? And the difference is, there's one structural difference, and that there are several consequences of that.
Okay.
The structural difference is the WebView runs in its own process. It's a different process than your main thread, your JavaScript thread. What it means is, first, it's sandboxed.
Okay.
So you can load any, and you are safe. Your application is safe. You have some, or actually you have many methods that you can control your WebView. So while we talk, I'm trying to turn my other computer here. But anyway, so these methods allows you to control. In fact, there is one sample on our GitHub repository.
Yep.
Do you have the URL there?
Yeah, I can pop that URL up right now.
Okay, so it's the sample called browser.
Yep.
If you're interested in the browser tag, in the WebView tag, you should take a look at this browser. Many things we do here, it's based on this sample. And the idea of the sample is it's not practical, because it's just a simulation of a browser inside the Chrome packaged app, but it shows you how powerful it can be. You can control anything of the WebView. So
yeah, it sort of lets you build your own browser, get the idea of how some of those things might want to work, how you might use these things in a real-world application.
Yeah. Yes, you don't want to create a Chrome packaged app that simulates a browser.
Yeah, that would be a little silly, but certainly something that you could do it if you wanted.
Yeah, you can do it.
We've done stranger things with Chrome apps, control helicopters. We've done things like write a web server within a Chrome app. So effectively, you're writing a web server within a web app. So no reason why you couldn't do it. Maybe not the most
drones and bacon fryers. Oh, that's not bullshit yet.
You know what? if somebody writes a bacon fryer controlling Chrome app, I will feature that in one of these Chrome apps office hours, because that'd be kind of cool. I like that.
Definitely. Okay.
All right.
So let's see what happened here. What I did here, I just added a WebView. I set the source attribute, the src attribute. The WebView has nothing inside the tags, so it's an empty tag. And I just save it, and let's check what happened when I reload this application.
All right.
Oh, nothing.
Huh.
Why is that? So let's check what happened here. And you see that this is planned, okay? It's not a bug.
always love those intentional. We got to show you something first.
No, that's true. It's on my script. The problem is the WebView doesn't come with a default width and height. It doesn't come with a default size. So you have to size it to properly show it. And we'll do it using CSS properties. It's the only way to do it. The first version of WebView, if you look at some samples or some documentation before, you saw some the width and height properties, but those are not available anymore. Okay.
Okay.
So let's do some. I will do two things at once. I will change the window size, and so we can see the size the WebView properly.
Reasonably sized.
Exactly. And let's change it to And that's it. To make sure that we know the limits of the WebView, you add a simple and beautiful border.
Okay.
Right? And voila, let's see, reload app, and there it is, my WebView. And
wow, that's a pretty red border you have there.
Yes. So, first of all, if I inspect this element, this window, you can see that there is nothing inside the WebView, right?
Right.
The WebView uses a shadow DOM. So it's a very advanced topic, probably, but anyway, I just show it here using advanced the advanced settings of developer tools. And now, as you can see here, there is not. Oh, that's awesome! So the second feature you have to remember that was planned here, but you know, you think it's a bug, it's not. The WebView requires a permission.
So one of the really important things with Chrome apps is that they work on a permission-based model, right? So
yes, exactly.
Permission that says, hey, we want
that's
to
a source. That's a very frequent source of errors, because there is no debugging information about that. The WebView element is simply not available.
That's kind of frustrating, isn't it? Like, you know.
Yes, there's no error in the console.
Do you know?
At all,
do you happen to know? Is there a bug filed on that, Renato?
If there's not, it will be in 1 hour.
Okay.
I will add it.
Yeah. So you know, that's the other thing. For those of you guys who are watching live, go star that bug. Go have a look, or you know what? Don't even wait the hour. Go have a quick peek and crbug.com. See if you can find it and file that bug. Let us know about it, so that you know, the more people who star this thing, the better chances of it getting fixed sooner, and the engineers who are working on these things know that it's an important factor for you.
Yes, exactly. So, okay. I added the permission for the WebView, and now if I reload the app, I have here the Google page, because why is this Google? Because I set explicitly the source of my WebView here. And as you can see, if I go to the developer tools, after I enabled Shadow Room, I can see the element have this shadow root, and this is implemented through a plugin like internal implementation. But anyway, it doesn't. This shadow DOM doesn't matter for a normal for the normal usage. Let's get through how to debug the content inside the WebView, because as you see, you cannot have access to the content here. However, the Chrome package app, you probably noticed that it has one inspector, one developer tools for each window, for each page that it opens. That includes the WebView. So if we right-click inside the WebView and we inspect element, here we are. Now we can inspect the content inside the WebView. Is that right?
All right.
Okay, so now let's see what we can do with this component. I will copy and paste some code to make it faster, okay? But first I will explain what I'm going to do here. As I said, the WebView it's not a simple iframe. I have control over the WebView. I can load a specific URL on JavaScript code, not only setting the attribute on the HTML file, I can reload the page, I can stop the loading, I can receive notification of events like if the load starts, the load stops. So let's implement a very simple thing that's very important. If you want to embed a website inside your Chrome packaged app, it's very important that you know when the user click on a link,
right?
It makes it load, and when the load finish, which means that your UI probably want to show some stuff to the user based on the fact that the load finished on the WebView, right?
Yep.
So what are we gonna do here? We're gonna include a script, and this script we will create it. Pete, can you answer me one question? Can I put some scripts here?
Inside that script block? No, and that's another thing that a bunch of people have run into. That's one of the content security policy rules that are implemented. You can't, unfortunately, put script within script blocks. You can only refer to external script sources.
Excellent. Thank you very much, sir. So this is one more thing I want to show you. This is totally unrelated to WebView again. Okay, it's a parenthesis, and part of this Chrome package, the Chrome app API integration. It's this code completion.
In fact, and while you're doing that code completion, I am going to put up the URL right now so that people can go download this if they want. The Sublime plugin, you can go to the URL goo.gl/F6 small DHT. So you can go to that URL, grab that, you can install it. Keep in mind, as Renato said, it is a beta sort of stage product. It's not something that's quite ready for full-time use. But it is a great place to start, and if you run into questions, problems, anything like that, please let us know about them, because this is something we want to make your development and our development on these apps a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are back to the code. Okay, while Pete was talking to you, distracting you, I typed out this code. I'm pretty quick on typing code, as you see. But okay, so let's add one ID to this element, because I will need 2 elements later. That's why I added an ID. And this code is it's a very simple code to get the WebView and to add event listeners to this WebView. And I have this indicator. I haven't created it yet, but I would do it through div here. And I want to show loading on this div, inside this div, every time the WebView is loading. And I want to clean this message when the load is finished. So look at this code. It's very, very simple.
Yep.
There are two event listeners here, and I listen to these 2 events. One thing, it's this documentation, this information about events, properties of the WebView is not on the website, on our documentation website yet. It's a very new thing, like 1 week, 1 or 2 weeks. It's very recent, and we have technical writers at this exactly moment working to improve this documentation and to insert all these properties. That's why I said on the Google Plus event, I said, come watch the secrets and undocumented stuff from WebView.
Nice. So I just put up a URL to the documentation that we have right now. And this is the stuff that, as Renato said, we don't have all the final stuff up there yet. The stuff that he's showing you here is not documented yet. We are working to get that done. So keep an eye on that URL that you see there. We should have that up hopefully within the next week or 2.
Okay. So, okay, what is this? Let's try this code, right? If there is no typo or copy and paste error, we will see this load indicator. Oops.
Alright, so reload app, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, it loaded already.
Yep.
So
and we
let's try.
Saw that loading that showed up in the top left.
Yes. So let's try some. Look, I'm not sure if if the streaming allows you to see, but
we need to find some slow that's like really slow.
Then Google is too fast.
It's always a benefit when stuff is nice and fast.
Yes, absolutely. At least, this case, we really would get some benefits from slow loading. But anyway, so see, it's very interesting because it's two processes. They are one process in WebView, one process in your application, and they are talking to each other through these methods. We haven't shown any method yet, but we have shown only the events. But there are some methods you can also use to reload the application, stop, abort, etc. The one very important thing here is since there are two processes, all the communication between the WebView and your web page are asynchronous. It's not synchronous, which means don't expect if you send a command like reload, the reload will be sent to the WebView through an internal post message, and that process will get that information, put it on the queue, and when it's ready, it will execute that queue. So it's not immediately. It looks immediately, but it's not internally. So don't think that since you have methods and not message sending, don't think it's synchronous, because it's not.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So now we let's change this code to have a small button. How we are reaching our time? So
we've got another couple minutes. If you want to dive into this a little bit more, no problem.
Okay. There is one piece of code that this is more recent than the events and etc. So probably will not be in the next batch of documentation updates.
Yep.
But it will be soon, like in 2 or 3 weeks. There is this concept of storage partition. What it means.
Okay.
Since this is a different process.
Yep.
It runs on a different process operation system wise.
Yep.
It cannot, and for security reasons, it cannot share the same partition as your Chrome packaged app. What is saved on a partition? Like cookies, like all information that is it could be persistent or it could be session persistent.
Right. So you're not going to have, if your WebView stores anything in local storage, you're not going to be able to get that. Even though, and actually that's a bad example because you don't have access to local storage within a Chrome app. But say, for example, IndexedDB.
In fact, the WebView has, and that's interesting. Because the WebView, it runs in different process, and that process runs as a browser view, not as a Chrome packaged view.
Okay.
It doesn't have access to the Chrome APIs, but it does have access to all the other things that Chrome packaged apps cannot do, including eval, including local storage, and everything else.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
So local storage, cookies, whatever, it's all tied to your process. And it's not shared between the WebView and your main app. That's all right. That's the contract.
Yep.
It's obvious that should be like this. However, I mentioned that one of the use cases is for widgets, and a widget requires a user to log in, right?
Yeah, so like if I want to +1 something, I want to retweet something, I need to be logged in.
Yes, exactly. Suppose you have a list, your application have a list of items like books.
Yep.
Okay, it's a book reading application, and you want to put a +1 button below each book.
Yep.
But that button is inside the WebView. Let's suppose it is inside the WebView. So you want the user to log in on each of those widgets on those web views? No, you don't. You definitely don't, right?
Yeah, that would be a small pain.
Yes. So a small pain.
It's a polite way of putting it.
Okay. So there is this this feature. It's just the implementation finished like last Friday, or it's very recent, but it's really awesome. What you do here, and I'm missing time to implement it, but it's pretty simple. I implement it quickly here. It's this property called partition, where you give your web view one. You put your web view in one named partition. You put whatever name you want here, like
so it's kind of like giving it
plus,
like an ID or something like that.
Yes,
but it's the partition name of that for that area.
Exactly. So if you do it on 2 web views and you use the same partition name, those will be shared. Will share the same partition.
Okay.
So if you log in one, and the other will be logged in also.
Okay.
The cookie will be available to the second one.
Oh, perfect.
There is one small bug. I noticed it yesterday while I was trying I was implemented the sample that I will report today. Those named partitions should be by spec. They should be, at least on my understanding, stored persistently. So it should be on disk. If you kill Chrome, if you kill application, when you get back, you should have the cookies back. The spec says explicitly that unnamed partitions should use the memory, a memory partition, but named partitions should not. So I will talk to the engineers who implemented that just to make sure that it's really a bug. Or it's a feature that will be implemented later. But the idea is it should. On theory, it should keep your partition safe from restarts.
All right.
All right. So there are several methods that I could talk about, but they are all implemented on the browser tag. On the browser sample, sorry.
Okay.
I keep saying browser tag because the name of the web view before was browser tag.
Right.
Okay. If you see browser tag mention it somewhere else, you know that it's the old web view.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's implemented the sample on the GitHub. It's pretty cool. It's pretty complete. It has it uses most of the methods. It doesn't use the partition because it's very recent, but it does use it does use the other methods. There is one last feature I want to talk about is the auto size. The auto size, I will also not show the whole code, but it's not implemented anywhere else. But I'm working on a sample, so soon we will have it on the GitHub repository. The auto size property, it's a property of the WebView element. When you set it, it allows when the embedded web page changes its layout size.
Yep.
It notifies the WebView element on the embedder. You know that there's the WebView content, which is the embedded
Yep.
And the embedder, the host of the WebView, receives an event of resize. So you can handle. You can auto resize. It's not automatically, but it's almost. You receive notifications that the web page changed its layout. The web page embedded inside the WebView. This is very, very important for widgets that change its size. For example, the Google Plus widget, the button is very small, but when you click on the button or you hover over it
starts to get bigger.
Exactly, it shows you friends that plus one, that page, that element, etc. So you can code, and I will have a sample code for that. You can listen to this event and resize your WebView appropriately. So it's visual. It gets coherent with the WebView content size, what you present on your Chrome package tab. And that's it.
All right.
Well, any question before we start?
There's a bunch of really great questions up on our Google Moderator page, and as a reminder, the link is right there. There. See, you can see it right there. So the questions are there. Between Renato and I, we'll take a bunch of these questions and do our best to answer them for you. So this first question, I'm not quite sure what the question's asking, but I use this link as well as a branch, and Pete said the tag WebView to load HTML app in Chrome to insert a DOM node security and control in the body of your browser. I'm not quite sure what you're asking there, and I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Those are characters that unfortunately I can't read. But so one thing that if you're looking to insert HTML into your app that's created someplace else, you can do that via a Sandboxed iframe so that you can run some code there and be able to use post message to transfer that back and forth. That's one way that you can get stuff between your app and another place, but it takes a little bit of work to do that. So if you can, maybe repost your question if you wouldn't mind, and ask a little bit more or provide a little bit more detail, and we'll try and answer that. So I'll go to the next question, and I'll pass Renato this one for you from Yarek, who's always asking us some really great questions. But since iframes are no longer allowed in Chrome apps, is there an alternate API that would allow me to sandbox SVG documents with synchronous one-way access from the top-level document?
Well, Yarek, it's good that you quoted bolded the synchronous here. If you are sandboxing something, it's very hard to keep it synchronous. Because if you are sandboxing something, it's because you don't trust that source.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it synchronous, it means that source can hang your whole application by doing nasty things. So all the ideas that come to my mind involves asynchronous solutions. However, you can use a WebView. If you really want to sandbox that, you can use the WebView, and you can create on your website a web page. That web page would run on your website, so that's not exactly a sandboxing. That reads that SVG, and you present it on your Chrome package app. So you point not to the SVG directly, but you point to this shim, this web page that web page would connect to would open the SVG, and you can use post message to communicate between the WebView and the embedder. So you have this part is asynchronous; it's not synchronous anymore. But if you want to, if there is anything that you need performance, that's probably the reason why you put asynchronous. You can do it on your web page, on your website, and just communicate with the Chrome package app for passing regular information, whatever status, whatever.
Awesome. And so
one point is if it's not sandboxed, if you don't need to sandbox the SVG, the Chromebooks app can read and can show SVG pretty well. Okay.
Yeah. So Paul Kinlan, one of the other great developer advocates on our team, just sent me an IM on my phone, and his comment was, if you can cache the SVG in an HTML5 file system, you can load it into an iframe, and Chrome will treat that as a local resource. So that's another option that you can use if you do that. There's a question that came in on YouTube that I want to address because I think it's always a good question. We usually get asked it probably every other Hangout. So why are we using a Mac instead of Chromebooks? And I'll answer part of it, and Renato, I'll let you answer some of it as well. For most of our Hangout equipment that we use here in the studio, we actually use Chromebooks and Chromeboxes. Renato's connected to me via Chromebox. But for me, and yep,
can you see it?
There we go. So Renato's got a Chromebook going. The only challenge that we face is doing some of the screen sharing and getting the screen sharing hooked up to our studio. Because Renato's in Brazil, I'm here in New York. The software that we use, it's unfortunately native software, and I can't do screen sharing. And then the other thing is Renato's got that great Sublime plugin, because we know some of you are using Sublime. So that's why we're using Macs here and there. But we really do try and use Chromebooks whenever we can.
And if you the user who asked it, I don't know his name, right? I don't have YouTube open here, but if you haven't tried the Chromebook, I know I'm suspect to say that, but it's awesome.
Yeah, they're pretty
it's
great.
Incredibly cool.
And
you should try at least.
Yeah, especially the brand
really
new ones, the ones that are $250, $249. It's a really great machine to have to be able to do pretty much 99% of the things I want to do, I can do on my Chromebook. So our next question again comes from Yarek. Does the WebView tag respect the X-frame options HTTP header? If the page is served with the X-frame option set to deny, with the WebView loaded anyways? I'm not sure about that. Renato, do you know?
Yes, it does not support. It does not respect. It shows independently of what X-frame option says, because remember that this is considered a native application. The X-frame options is for saving the user from click hijacking. I think it's the most important use for that.
Right. That's a good point.
But since you're running it as a native application, it doesn't make sense because the user trusted you. The user added your application. Your application has access to the hardware of the user. What's the point of hijacking the clicks from the user? And second point, this is not the open web. The Chromebooks apps are safe in the sense that they are distributed in a place where applications that doesn't follow the rules of not stealing information from the user, not hijacking clicks from the user, they are removed from the web store and the accounts are suspended. So if the user trusted you, we suppose that you don't need to have those protections from the open web, which is more open. Cool.
All right, so next question. Can you use NACL and pass values to a web page or a web app held in a WebView? And can you make two pages held in two different instances of a WebView interact by exchanging values? Can you establish session times out for the WebView held pages?
Yeah, there are three questions. Let me try to answer one by one.
All right, so the first one is, can you use NACL to pass values to the page app held in the WebView?
Not directly.
Okay.
You can communicate to NACL use post message. It's another process, but you can use either your background page or the embedder of the WebView as a hub of communication. So you can use a NACL module, communicate through the NACL embedder, the web page, or the background page, and have that web page communicate back to the WebView. So yes, you can, but it's not directly from Echo to the WebView.
All right.
That's a very good point. We need one sample using Echo on the GitHub repository.
Yeah, we had some questions, and in fact, we don't. I'll throw this out there. It's not confirmed yet, but our Chrome Apps office hours in 2 weeks, we're trying to schedule someone to come in and talk about using NACL within Chrome Apps. So haven't locked it yet, but that's the plan.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right. Well,
it's kind of interesting because last week we have this Dart running in Chrome packaged app sample.
Yep.
As you can see on GitHub, and now on Echo, it's getting quite interesting.
We're doing some cool things, I think. All right. Well, let's move on to the next question. And actually, there's just about 2 questions left, and I think that's probably the perfect amount of time. But would it be possible to implement a mobile browser emulator using the WebView tag? Is there a way to override some of the device parameters seen by window.matchmedia or CSS media queries inside of a WebView?
Jarek, unfortunately, not now. But that's one possible idea. You cannot, you don't have the access to the request, so you cannot change the HTTP headers yet. But that's a very good use case. I talked yesterday to the engineering team, and they will discuss about that. There's definitely not. I'm not committing that it will be implemented, but it certainly will be discussed.
Yeah, and in some ways, no, I guess you couldn't do that. I was going to say, I wonder if you could inject some script as a content script into the WebView window where you could override some of those things, but that would be getting pretty messy and not something you'd really want to get into.
No, I think you cannot do that. You don't have the web request API that is available to extensions.
Yeah.
So I can't think of a way to do it, even a hacky way to do it now.
Yeah. Okay.
But this should be discussed internally. And I think it's the same for the next question from Jarek also. Override user agent string, override the cache model,
yep.
and define specific user style sheets. I think the answer is the same. Okay, it's a very compelling use case. You can emulate, as you said, you can emulate mobile browsers. You can emulate other stuff inside your Chrome packaged app if you're doing like an IDE. So it is a good use case. I totally understand that.
Yeah.
So I hope that the engineering team find that it's possible and feasible to do in a foreseeable future.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, that's sort of the end of the questions and the end of the time we have for today. I've put the link up to Renato's Sublime plugin. You can see it right there. You can go grab that, check it out, let us know what you think, provide your feedback. Next week we're going to be joined by Paul Kinlan, who's going to be joining me to talk about, what are we talking about next week? Oh, third-party authentication. So one of the really cool things about Chrome apps is that it's really easy to go do authentication up against the Google services, right? So you can go authenticate a user and be like, yep, this is Pete, and he's got this Google account. But not all services obviously want to use the Google authentication providers. You might want to use somebody else's authentication provider. You may want to authenticate against maybe Twitter or Foursquare or whatever. You may want to authenticate against those so that you can go and do whatever you want to do with those particular service providers. Now we've got a set of APIs that let you go in and authenticate those, get the set of cookies, do all the OAuth stuff, all that fun sort of connection that needs to happen. So Paul and I are going to dig into that next week. And Renato's actually going to get a great post up on our Google Plus page on Chrome developers that'll walk you through some of the more technical aspects and have some samples and all that kind of stuff. So we'd love for you guys to join us same time next week, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, or wherever that happens to be, wherever you are. With that, I want to say thanks very much for joining us. Hope this was really useful for you, and thank you very much, everybody. Alrighty, bye guys.